Hello and welcome to Eddie V Live, the Eddie V Live show. I'm your host, Eddie V, and we're on Tuesday of the third week of Easter. Hope Easter's still going strong for you. Today on the show, I'm going to be giving my health testimony. The reason for this is I think it's a good foundation stone because I do have very controversial health takes. And so I think if I kind of give my experiences first before I get into, I'll do them randomly throughout as I'm thinking about them. But I think it's good to have that foundation first of why does this guy care so much, or how does he even know anything, or what are his experiences. So I want to do that today. Hopefully the mic is working. Looks like it's working good. But first, I wanted to just comment on a few things that I saw today. They were right before I went live, so I don't want to talk about them extensively, but I thought they were pretty funny. First was, and it kind of shows just how maybe out of the loop I am in terms of the current conversation in society. The first one was Matt Fradd is interviewing a guy about Darwin evolution, and the title, I didn't watch it, but the title just sounds, it's very very tentative and hesitant. It's like, should we question Darwin evolution? And I'm so far beyond that, it's like not even funny. I'm like, do people even believe in that anymore? That's how out of the loop I am, which I'm sure there's a ton of people. That it was definitely the pervading theory when I was in public school and high school. But for me, I did the research on it. I was like, this is garbage. I can't believe people believe this. And, I always joke with people. I'm like, did they find the missing link yet? Do we have it? Is it no? Then you still believe it though? Okay. So I just can't believe that they're talking about that. So that was, maybe I'll do an episode on that. I really don't want to. I think other people have done great research. The Kolbe Institute, as in Maximilian Kolbe, they did some work on it. I don't know how great it was. It was interesting for sure. They got into some interesting stuff though, but you can check them out. I do like one of the head guys. I'm blanking on his name. I think it's Owen. He's an interesting character. But check them out if you want. And the other thing was Trent Horn. I'm not a huge Trent Horn fan, if you know me. And I saw that he was interviewing this guy that calls himself, or his channel or his social media, Gay X Trad. And I only watched a little bit of it. And it was pretty painful. It was a little painful. Again, I'm like, because they're talking about sexual ethics. And I didn't know that we were like concerned that the arguments for sexual ethics wasn't good. I feel like it's more that people care more about pleasure than they do about God or morality. It's not like the arguments need to be rehashed or anything. The arguments have been solid for a very long time. That's another reason why I'm not super into theology of the body. I think it's like the same sexual ethic, just very soft. Maybe not soft is the right word. I love John Paul II. I'm not a John Paul II hater, I don't think. But when you read you dip into philosophy, you read the saints. I don't think I found anything super new in theology of the body. Maybe it's the way he puts it. But it's honestly, I don't think anyone reads the actual theology of the body. I think they always just read someone talking about the theology of the body because it's way over people's heads. John Paul II was a heavy-hitting philosopher, and he wasn't trying to dumb it down. I'll tell you that much. So he's interviewing Gay X Trad. I'm sure there's a good explanation for this will be helpful to someone, but I am just so out of the loop that to me, I don't even understand it. So I wanted to mention those two kind of funny things. Let's get into the health testimony. This might be a longer episode just because I'm going to be rambling about my experiences. Take what you want if something helps you. And I hope I can elaborate, especially if people have questions about specific things, because I know a bunch of people are unhealthy. That's the first thing I want to say is everyone is unhealthy and they think they're alone. And the internet's kind of helped with this, but you are not alone. If you look at the statistics, even for America in terms of disease and everything, um, gastrointestinal cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular, all these things, people have it. There's a high percentage of people have it in the US. So you are not alone. And I think that's one of the great things about YouTube and I guess social media in general is that people have been able to access other people and not feel so alone, especially with our fragmented society. But anyway, with that, you're not alone. Here we go. So I grew up, I was a pretty healthy kid. I've never really been obese or anything like that. I was like a little pudgy when I was in fifth grade. Nothing like that. I had a little bit of an anxiety problem, probably from like late elementary to early middle school. But that went away. I'm not even sure why. I could speculate, but I won't here. And besides that, I was a pretty healthy kid. A couple broken bones, nothing crazy. But I will mention in middle school, high school, I did start drinking and doing drugs very early in life. Not a good thing. Don't do that. But I did that, just not a lot, in the suburbs. Wasn't really raised religiously or had no purpose or meaning in life. Sounds really sad. I was I was kind of a happy kid, I think. But yeah, so just experimenting with different things. And so I just mentioned that because it might, I don't think it did, but you might use it as a explanation for ill health later on. I don't think it was causative though. So you have that. And then I get into college and I was still pretty healthy. Some things were maybe cropping up, maybe some stomach issues, things like that. I did have a cyst and I didn't really think so. Maybe that's like you would call it a skin issue in the common parlance. And that kind of freaked me out, but little procedure and it's gone. So things were starting to get a little bit weird in college, but nothing really still. And then right after college of my undergraduate, because I did do a master's degree right after, but after my undergraduate in about summer of 2017, I'll say it in order, even though at the time I didn't really think about it this way. So I went to Europe, felt great, came back, and then I was supposed to go to China with my family. So before it, I went to the doctor for something else, and I had mentioned that I was going. I think I told them, I was like, "Is there any vaccines or something I have to get because I'm going to China?" And they were like, "Oh yeah." And there was like 2 or 3 shots. One of them was yellow fever or yellow river fever, something like that. I can't really exactly remember. I'm sure if I went back to that specific clinic, they would have my data, but I just haven't bothered. So I got 2 or 3 vaccines specifically for travelers to China, and I also got a re-up of tetanus. Tetanus. So that was in the summer, probably late June, early July of 2017. And then 2 or 3 days after that, I got Vietnamese food. And then I felt fine. And then later that night, in the middle of the night, I had this like huge episode where I couldn't breathe very well, and my like heart area was hurting. And so my dad took me to the urgent care, and they did like a EKG or something. And eventually they were like, "Oh, we think this is just GERD," which is basically like a heartburn. It's not really a heartburn disease; it's a esophagus disease. But it has to do with reflux. It's literally gastroesophageal reflux disease, I think. I can't remember it now. It's been so long. But they said I probably have GERD, and they gave me like this tonic that was probably just Pepto-Bismol, like roided out. And so I took that. It did like calm it a little bit, and it did hurt up here in my throat too, but it mostly was like in my chest. I was kind of feeling it. That kind of freaked me out. But then after a couple of days, we were going to China, and like less than a week after that. I felt fine, and then we went to China. We worked in China for about a month. The whole China trip, so many issues, stomach issues, heartburn issues. It was pretty like I had a good time, but it was pretty miserable in that sense. And all this Chinese food, you want to eat it. Low key, Chinese food is not as good as some other food, but still, you're in a foreign country, you want to eat the food. I was still eating it, but I was feeling miserable. At that time, we were just like, oh, it's because China, you're traveling, different diet, stuff like that, even though my family seemed fine. So that happened. I came back to America, was eating American food, I guess, and I felt better. But there was this lingering stomach thing, but it wasn't really bad. And then fast forward maybe like less than a year. I can't pinpoint the exact date because it came on gradually. But throughout the next year, I would start to get this constant heartburn and kind of, it would get up into my throat too. So constant heartburn. I would get, so that was the first thing. It was the heartburn and like the reflux. And then I started to get stomach issues, going to the bathroom a lot. I'm not going to get too graphic with that. And still, I didn't go so I went to the doctor once and they just told me to take these P inhibitors, which inhibits, they were saying it was like too much acid in my stomach. My stomach was producing too much acid. That's what caused the reflux and possibly the stomach issues because it's not digesting correctly, I guess. I went to the doctor. He was a nice guy. He didn't I was sat with him for like 10 minutes. It wasn't that long. And the most of the time he talked about, he's like, oh, there's some stuff. He was a nice guy, but he was like, there's some studies about you eat macarons and they have coconut oil and it helps your stomach. And I was like, what? I don't even know what you're talking about. And he talked about that. He's like, oh, this cool study. I think he'd probably just read that study like the night before and he was just hype about it. But so he gave me the P inhibitors and it just didn't seem right to me. I took them for a little bit and then it didn't feel better. By a little bit, I probably mean like a couple of days, not a long of a time. But, you might say like, why didn't you just follow the doctor's advice? For some reason, I was already very speculative of authority. I guess it could be because I was raised like very libertarian in my family. Excuse me. In my family, libertarian. So it was like government sucks, authority sucks, all this stuff. So I think it might have been that, but I'm not really sure. But I took them for a couple of days and I was like, nah, I don't even care. And so I kept trucking along and it just kept getting worse. Still with the reflux, the heartburn, stomach issues. And I wasn't really concerned for some reason until it got to a point where my skin on my hands turned white. And I took pictures of them, but I didn't keep the pictures. I've had like dumb phones and different phones since then, I didn't have a phone for a while too. So that kind of ruined the picture history thing. But my hands, they became white because I guess they were so malnourished and they started to crack where literally there was a point in time in the mornings. It's hard to do the timeline, but it was within this year that I would like wake up and my hands would just be stale and stiff, the skin on them. And I would like flex them either this way or this way. And there'd be cracks on my knuckles and they would be bleeding. Like not like shooting out, but like dripping out of my knuckles. And that started to freak me out a lot. So I eventually went back to a primary care doctor and they gave me a referral to a stomach expert. I forgot which type it was. I think it was gastrointestinal something MD, something. And I told him, so I went to this guy, he was a really old guy, and I told him my symptoms. And at this time, when my skin got bad, I started to do some research. I started to just Google stuff and I was just reading like Healthline. I was like, what is happening to me? And this doctor, I didn't really get along with him. We had one meeting and it was longer than the other doctors' meetings. But I was hoping maybe for more of a discussion. He was just kind of just going to tell me what's what. So I think I met with him twice. The first time, I just told him everything, and then he was like, "Cool." He's like, I think you have celiac disease." Immediately, like he's like, "You have celiac. You might have celiac. I need you to get a blood test to check for celiac disease." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I'll just never be able to eat bread again." So whatever. So did that. And in my own research, I was just looking up like, has anyone experienced this before or anything? Wasn't really finding much. And so I waited for the blood test. The blood test came back negative that I don't have celiac. So I was like, oh, cool. But he's like, oh, you still might have celiac. We need to do, because you still have the symptoms, we need to do a colonoscopy. And I was like, what was the point of the blood test if I'm going to have to do a colonoscopy anyway? And this is the second meeting, which I got really, I guess you could say, testy with him. I've been doing my own research and I'm like, well, why did we just go to celiac? Well, like, what about this symptom, that symptom? Like, what's going on? Why did that doctor think it was too much stomach acid? I've heard of too low stomach acid as a problem. And he was just not, he was basically like in a nice way telling me like, you're stupid. You don't know anything. You don't have an MD. I'm the doctor. You need to shut up. You need to get this colonoscopy. So I went out of that meeting really disenchanted. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable with this guy sticking a camera up my butt and being knocked out. So I actually opted out of that. And I was like, it was kind of dramatic, but it was like raining, if I remember correctly. And I was in my car when I made the decision. And I was like, you know what? I probably just have some rare disease. I'm going to die. So like, I'll just die with dignity. I was being very dramatic, I think, but I was like, I'm going to die with dignity. I'm going to go out my own way. I'll do as much research as I can. I don't really have a life. At this point, I had been fighting. I had been doing Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And like trail running and stuff and like being all social and crap. But like with my sickness getting worse, I had to stop doing fighting because I would like, and this is another symptom, I would start to get like really nauseous from, I don't know if it was in accord with the heartburn and the reflux or it was a separate thing. I would get really nauseous and I would get super lightheaded. So like, I felt like I was going to pass out sometimes. So I had to do like stop training intensely, which looking back was a blessing, but I'll continue with just the health testimony. So I made the decision in the car. I was like, I'll just die. It's fine. And this was kind of the turning point for me for also looking into like religion and like what happens after death too. Cause I was like dramatically being like, I'm going to die. I should probably check that stuff. Like, what is the meaning of life? That was the thing, what was the meaning of life? That was what I was looking into. What was the point of it all? And then I was also looking into health stuff. So the symptoms I have, this is probably like before the summer of 2018. So I have the reflux, I have heartburn, I have stomach issues, I have the skin problem, and then like the last final thing is like I'm getting very nauseous constantly, and I have lightheadedness all the time. I'm working in an office building at this time. And I'm in a cubicle, no windows. So keep that in mind, if you're thinking about like what went wrong with him. Cause I really don't know still. I have theories, but I really don't know. So I'm spending, not a good thing, but a lot of time at work. Cause I have 3 monitors there. So I'm able to like do my work and also like be looking at other stuff. So I'm doing a lot of research on religion and on health, and I'll maybe do a religious testimony another time. So I'm looking into a lot. So first thing I did was I started reading about just different diets. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the things that came up, like what do you eat if you have this problem, stuff like that. And then you just get basic websites telling you like eat more fruit, you need more fiber and stuff like that. You've probably seen those things if you've had any health problems. And I listened to them for a while. I will tell you this, before my health religious conversion, I don't think I had thought a solid thought in my whole life. And I really thank God for this suffering, because it really opened up my eyes to like, I wasn't even living. I was like an animal or something. It was crazy. But I started to think, and so then something clicked in my mind where I was like, I actually had tried some of those diets, and it wasn't getting better. I would try them for like 2 weeks. So not crazy, but like it wasn't really helping. And maybe I wasn't doing it long enough. But eventually I was just like, I need to learn how the human body works. And I need to learn, because like people have always had these problems. So for some reason I went to history. I was like, I should look at what other people have experienced. So I started learning the history of food, which was really cool, because you don't really get much until you get into the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment. And then that's when like society has this huge shift into like a different way of viewing food and a different way of interacting with food. For some reason, I was like, the only thing I can do is food or some like medicinal thing. So I was looking at like drugs and food. I didn't want to get surgeries or anything, and I didn't trust the doctors to like be able to diagnose me because I had that really bad experience with that doctor. So that's what I was looking into. Eventually, I would try these different diets that were like a little more under the surface, but not really much. But like the specific carbohydrate diet, elimination diets were the first thing I was trying. These were not helping me at all. Like I didn't have the discipline to do these things, like an elimination diet. The specific carbohydrate diet, I didn't have like, there's so many things you have to remember. I was like, I'm never going to remember. I didn't have the discipline yet. And so for the elimination, I tried it where it's like you eliminate a bunch of things except for like a couple things, which I don't even remember the couple things were. And then you slowly add back to see what foods are bothering you, which I didn't even know if it was foods bothering me. I just wanted to feel better. That was literally the thing I was looking for. So I keep pouring over research, and it's crazy because I was living with a friend at the time, and this is the real breakthrough. He watched Joe Rogan all the time, and I don't really know who Joe Rogan was, and I was like, I don't really care who Joe Rogan is, but he'd always tell me, he's like, oh, I saw this video of him talking about this thing. And eventually, and I would really ignore what he was saying, not a very open-minded person. And eventually he told me about this doctor that was on Joe Rogan, and I think he was doing it for weight loss more. He was thinking about it, but this not the doctor, my friend, but he was telling me in terms of weight loss. But the doctor that Joe Rogan brought on, whose name is Dr. Sean Baker, and this doctor like only ate meat, like steaks every day, only meat. And he said like, he was saying like, this is like the way you need to eat. I don't even remember the original interview. I just remember watching. I was like, this is crazy, but I have so many problems. Like this guy, he was like super jacked. He looked healthy. So I was like, all right. That sounds pretty cool. I didn't do it right away, but that got me super thinking. And I started looking into the carnivore diet, and there was a lot of history with that. You get into a lot of stuff, which I don't know the order of this, but I eventually ran into Weston A. Price's research. That was beautiful. I ran into this guy who wrote the Fiber Menace. I ran into some other things, Crohn's Carnivore, all these different things. And I wasn't on the carnivore diet yet, but I was like, whoa, this is crazy. This is a whole new way of looking at the world. Like before that, you had been told like you have to eat cereal with milk in the morning. You have to eat like a snack. You have to eat lunch. You got to make sure like it's like white bread, a little bit of protein, a bunch of veggies, fruits. And then you have to eat dinner, which is kind of the same thing as lunch. And then always have your dessert, drink your juices, drink your sodas, drink your pasteurized milk, all this stuff. And so that's what I had been raised on. So this guy was like just totally breaking the Overton window for me in terms of health. And so that was the, standard American diet and a lot of fast food in there. And then this guy's like, yeah, I eat once a day and I eat like 2 steaks just for dinner. And I was like, I hadn't even thought of like fasting ever. It's like that. Not only have I thought of fasting, but this guy's doing obviously with like very extreme just meat. So it took a while of me being ill and just getting worse and worse to be like, okay, I'm going to try the carnivore diet. So I think it was in June of 2018 that I started the carnivore diet. I had tried some other ones. They weren't working. I started the carnivore diet. The first 2 weeks, I was so miserable. Like I probably was thinking about quitting at that time. But like it was crazy. My dreams were crazy. I was like salivating constantly. I was like tripping out. Like I felt like I was seeing things. It was such a crazy time. Those first 2 weeks, I was like craving sugar. Like I wanted to like hurt some, like maybe like I wasn't going to, but like I was like, I was going to burst. It was crazy. But then after that 2 weeks, it was still hard after the 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong. But that 2 weeks was crazy. But then after that, I started to like, my skin started to get better. It was like almost like in a movie. It was like receding. My lightheadedness was getting better. I had stopped working out at that time, so I lost a lot of weight, and I had stopped eating a lot too. But like I started to put on weight immediately. Some of the craziest things was like the clear thinking I had was incredible. I felt like I was like 2 standard deviations smarter on the IQ or something, but I was like so clear of thinking. I was fasting like crazy. I started skipping breakfast the first thing, and then I would eat meat for lunch at work and then dinner. And it was like straight up just pork and steaks. And it was disgusting because I would cook the crap out of them, but I would just do it. So that was originally, and I still had stomach issues and stuff, but I started to feel a lot better. It was getting better rather than worse. And then one of the things I remember too is the sleep. So like in the mornings, usually I was good about getting up on my alarm, but like it was sluggish. I was like dying in the morning, always, since I was a kid. But when I was on this carnivore, at night when I hit the pillow, it was like lights out immediately. And I would have like these crazy, like dead. I was dead, like if there were dreams, I don't really remember them. Sometimes it was like crazy dreams, but like when I woke up, they were gone. And I was like, I like got like I was like a vampire out of a coffin. I was like just getting up. And then I was just at it. Like I was like excited for the day. That was another thing too. I was like elated all the time. It was almost like I was high. Not really, but like it was just like I was so joyful and I was like, let's go. Let's attack this day. Let's do it. And I was just up. I was only sleeping like 6 hours too, because it's like go to sleep. And then I wake up 4 or 5 in the morning. I was just like, boom, I'm there. And it's like, I can't even go back to sleep. I don't even want to go back to sleep. I feel great. I feel amazing. So it's crazy. And so I kept doing it. I think I count 5 days where I didn't just eat meat, if I remember correctly, throughout that whole year. Like even me and my buddy, we did a whole 2-week like hiking trip in California. And every night I was drinking beer too, which is crazy. Still felt great though. But I was literally at night, we would have steaks. He would have a little bit more different stuff, but he would have steaks with me. We'd have steaks, and I would drink like a Michelob Ultra with my meal or water, depending, because I just wanted to drink with him to be, to be buds. But it didn't really affect me negatively, honestly, if I'm being really honest with you. I felt great on that trip. And that was probably only 2 months into carnivore. And on that trip too, we were in the sun. We were hiking like 10 to 20 miles every day, Yosemite, Sequoia National Forest. We were in the sun. It's just beating down on us. No sunburns, no sunscreen, no sunburns. It was incredible. It was amazing. So that was that year, and it just kept getting better. I was a different person. I felt amazing. I was confident. It was like actually affecting me like emotionally and stuff. I think that might have been maybe too mixed with the fasting. Eventually I went to 1 meal a day, just eating dinner meat. And I just got so disciplined. It was crazy. And I think that still affected me to this day, that year. Just like, I am like, food doesn't have any effect on me. Most other pleasures don't have any effect on me. I'm just like locked in. It's crazy. So that was that. And that year was amazing. But so the one thing I'll say, that was kind of the fix it for me, but it didn't fix everything. Because the one thing I'll say is when I would eat some other things, like anything really, I can't remember a thing that I didn't eat, I would immediately get the problems again. So after that year, start experimenting, I just get problems. I went on a year of missionary work the next year, and I was pretty solid most of the times, but sometimes it would come back with a vengeance. My heartburn, stomach problems. I don't really remember any skin problems, but maybe some like head stuff. And waking up in the morning wasn't as great and different things like that because I was eating whatever was given to me. But that carnivore really helped me. But I was like, am I just going to do all meat the rest of my life? Or is there a way to get back into eating what I want? And that led me into research that took me all the way, baby. That took me into like area 51 of like health. So I don't really know the orders that well because I was doing a lot of reading then, a lot of theology, history, philosophy, and health and other things as well. I was just getting crazy with it. And it made me the man I am today. No phone, no phone, no social life really. Just a little bit with the church because I just cut off, because I just wanted to live for God. I still want to live for God. So I cut off a lot of social avenues and I was just locked in. Thinking about becoming a priest too, so I was just locked in. But the things I would discover, and I've mentioned them in this podcast before, is Aajonus was a huge one. And I actually learned from him from a friend who was going through his own health journey. His had to do with migraines, so it was a little different for us, but he ran into Aajonus, Vonderplanitz. I read some of his books, some of his stuff, watched some of his videos. He died in 2013. Rest in peace. And he got me onto raw food and that concept. And then he also got me onto like germ theory and how incorrect germ theory is, and like how bad like antibiotics and stuff are for you and how that affects you. And then I got into like Dr. Sam Bailey. I told you already about Weston A. Price saying, the three things that all healthy societies have eaten is meat and usually in some form of raw form, seafood, usually in some sort of raw form, and raw dairy. Raw dairy was a huge one. And it was just blowing my mind. I was just changing. I was experimenting, with all of this stuff. And the big thing I think was understanding germ theory and how that worked. Because then with that, I was able to like kind of self-diagnose myself. I was like, and this is not really related. It's kind of related to germ theory, but it's like germs, bacteria, parasites, all that stuff is actually good for you. I would say it's good for you. And what is happening to like my stuff, like to everything, it's starting in the gut. It's starting from what I consume and it's going through all of this. And it's going to affect other things like your skin. Because if you're not getting the essential nutrients you need, you're not going to be able to, have healthy skin and be able to think clearly and not pass out and stuff like that. So what I guess what happened to me, I had taken a lot of antibiotics in college, probably before that too. I just remember in college because I was kind of responsible for my own health in college as opposed to my parents before that. Yeah, so he was talking about antibiotics and stuff. So what I'm thinking was I like either with the vaccines, antibiotics, or just unhealthy lifestyle, I had actually damaged my gut, my stomach, or my intestines in some way. And what the carnivore diet did was the carnivore has basically no fiber. So nothing is really hitting the intestines. And it's just straight up like your body's using everything in that meat. So what I was doing was like I was giving my intestines some time to heal and the nutrients maybe to heal. But there was a bad situation there that needed more direct fixing. And the carnivore was just like kind of like overpassing that issue because it was just like I was having no fiber that would like irritate or anything that issue. And then probably some sort of like bacterial imbalance, something like that. Or maybe just a lack of bacteria in your gut because the bacteria help to like clear away dead stuff and different things like that. I'm not going to get too into that. I think I will make a video on germ theory in general, just some of the big pieces of it. So I was just looking at all that, and eventually I really credit fermented raw milk for kind of just eventually healing my gut because it's introducing a bunch of bacteria, living things into you, and that bacteria, those living things are going to help start to repair some of that big damage and start to really balance things. People argue about like alkalinity and acidity and stuff like that. I'm not really sure about those things, honestly. I haven't looked into it. But I think whatever, like the milk, especially fermented, it's just the perfect balance of like what a living mammal needs, right? You think of a woman's breast milk, you think of cow's milk. Like what do they give a baby to like grow, be strong and healthy? They give them milk. And they give them it raw, not pasteurized, in its full form. Good fats, good proteins, all this good stuff, good sugars. So I went from like this carnivore guy's like meat is like my only friend to like look at this whole history of humanity, look at what we've been consuming, what makes for healthy societies. Weston A. Price is finding societies that don't even have disease in them. So like I don't have to live this way. No one has to live this way. And it was just an amazing thing to discover. And then since then, I'm just getting more deep into it. But like I would say that was like the solution. And I still, it's interesting if I could eat pretty bad for a while now. I can go a couple months, maybe even more than that. I don't feel great, but it's not like I'm like super sick. And I credit that to like just a total restoration of health. Also, I'll mention before I went on carnivore, I was like kind of starting to bald. And then when I went on carnivore, I wasn't really paying attention to it because I thought I was going to die, but like my hair grew back. And so I'm gonna try to do that again. I don't know if I'm gonna do carnivore. I'm trying to find out like the root cause of everything. So with hair, I'm trying to figure it out. I think I'm getting close, but we'll see. And there's a lot of people that have done way more research on the hair thing. I don't even want to front like I know anything. There's some great people. But anyway, that's a little side story. But yeah, so that was the main story. Like eventually with the raw meat, the meat in general, the raw meat, the raw milk products, eventually getting into like why can't we eat bread and grains and rice nowadays without getting sick? And then like discovering like basically American food is just poisoned. We spray it with herbicides, pesticides, folic acid, all this stuff. And people seem to be getting onto that now, which is great. So discovering that and now being able to eat like rice that's not poisoned and flour that's not poisoned, and I feel great. Understanding like what fruits and vegetables are, like how healthy societies have interacted with those things very seasonally, obviously. And just having this whole journey, I'm probably missing a lot of stuff, but that's like the general skeleton of it. And yeah, so and eventually getting to now where like I'm not like super strict as I used to be. I would, maybe I would like to get back into that, but like understanding more of like the human health system and how everything interacts, and like how the human person interacts with nature and like what is natural to human beings and different things like that has been such a journey. It's been such a blessing. And excuse me. And the suffering was so key when you're in it. And I didn't really, in the beginning, I didn't really have a relationship with God. And I developed that relationship, and like I'm able to look back with not understanding the suffering and being like, why is this happening to me? To now like fully be able to look back and be like, God, thank you so much. Like I saw what you were doing, like in a minimal way. And even that's amazing. I can't even imagine the whole plan you have for me, including suffering. So it's just praise be to God, praise be to Jesus Christ. It's just amazing. So that was a very general, how long was that? Let's see. Not bad. So that was kind of the general health testimony. I want to just, like I said before, I want to put that there. So I will be talking about health stuff in the future, just anything that's on my mind, anything that I think will be helpful to people, and just so I can talk to myself about beautiful things. But if you have any questions, please let me know. Any comments, please like and subscribe. And yeah, I look forward to talking about this more. So God be with you. God bless you. And I will see you on the next episode. Good night.